What's up, everyone? Well, one of the videos that I've done in the past that got the most views was about this tray of Mame from a year or two ago. So today I'm going to tear it apart again and go over the tricks that I use to keep Mame growing, as well as the maintenance that I need to do on these plants at this point. All right, well, some of these are not rooted in here because I kept on top of basically getting them pulled out of the tray from time to time to snip off the roots that are escaping out the bottom. But these guys have been in here long enough that they actually need to be repotted. So I'm just going to start pulling them out here and setting them aside on the bench. Some of them are rooted in. This one I had pulled out because it was actually, I used it in a show recently. This one doesn't have any roots coming out the bottom right now, but definitely needs a repot. Hasn't been super vigorous this year. This maple is well rooted in. I'm going to snip off the bottom roots here so I can separate it. Now in this tray is fine lava that's been sifted to sort of like a coarse sand consistency. And unfortunately, after the last time that I took the trees out of here and redid the tray, I got a lot of liverwort in here in addition to the moss. So I'm actually going to clear out all the moss and liverwort, and I'm going to use something to try to keep that under control. So these cotoneasters were potted into these pots more recently, and they've escape rooted into the ground pretty well. So I think because when you allow things to escape root like this, it can really cause the drainage holes to get plugged up. You need to stay on top of making sure that you're on a repotting schedule, especially this time of year. It's repotting time here in Northern California, and I just need to get in here and basically just do like a routine root trim on these trees. But of course, these guys also need a branch trim. So if I just pull this out, the root snapped. This one, you can see it's looking quite bushy, and I didn't really touch it this year, so it looks like it needs a styling as well as a repotting because it's been in this pot now for 2 years, I believe. This is a volunteer Monterey cypress, and that's going to have to come out, but it's not in a container. Well, it's in this container. So let's see. This is a Japanese black pine. I believe this is a 2-year-old that I stuck in here, and I candle cut it. So that's what's keeping the needles on the short side, but it didn't really make very good, I don't know if you guys can see, but it didn't really make very good needles. The needles are nice and short, but they look a little funny. Okay, and a Portulacaria in one of our cement pots. I had actually potted this just into this cement pot and was leaving it not in the tray, but it started to get kind of yellowy leaves, which indicated to me maybe that the roots just needed some more room. But they haven't escaped out the holes on the bottom in the months that I've had it in the tray, but the growth and color on the tree has improved. I'm not sure that Portulacaria like, at least in my climate, being in pots that are quite this small. And another cotoneaster that I've been training into a cascade shape. So I'll go ahead and repot this because it's been, I believe, a year and a half maybe since that was last repotted. And finally, an Itoigawa that I started from cutting. You can see how many roots I'm going to cut off here, but I started this from cutting, and it's been in this tiny container. So there's not a whole lot I need to do, but it might be a good idea to repot it. All right, so I've got my new Thomas and Kathy Arakawa large Mame tray that I'm going to fill up here with some new soil. So I've got the large holes screened here so that none of the soil goes out the bottom. I'm going to start by adding a layer of just regular medium soil. Previously, I just used entirely fine lava, but I am running low on lava. I have to go get some more. So for the time being, bonsai soil is going to work fine. I don't want to reuse the lava that I had because it's covered in liverwort spores and whatnot, and I'm sure that the liverwort is going to come back really quickly. So I'm going to switch to using this kind of like a drainage layer, but in a way, the main purpose of this layer is just to ensure that the smaller particles don't escape out from between the holes in the screen as well as the small tie holes that are along the side. Okay, on top of the medium, I'm going to put some Shohin aoki mix. And again, I just used straight sifted lava fines last time. The reason I'm using this is that I'm short on the lava fines. So I'm just going to layer the bottom here with some actual bonsai soil. If you take your finest screen kind of like this and sift out your regular particle sizes that you use for bonsai purposes, and then what comes out the bottom turns into sort of a mixture of dust and 1/16 inch particle size, but then you still have the dust. So I found that kitchen strainers like this actually do a really good job of removing the dust and keeping these very small, basically mame sized particles. And so now I'm going to add a layer of that on top of this. Okay, so that is my bed of lava and akadama and basically fine bonsai soil on top of regular bonsai soil. And the purpose of this is just to make it easy to nestle the containers in. You'll notice that I have left it a full inch below the rim of the pot. And that's because, basically this is sort of like a little table for mame, and I don't want them to be able to tip out of the pot. So I've left it low, and that way if they tip over, usually they'll get caught by the edge of the pot, in a windy situation or whatnot. It also leaves some room for the moss to kind of like fill in this part, this height around the trees once I get them in there. As opposed to like a regular repotting on a Shohin or larger tree, a lot of the tools that we actually use in bonsai are not well suited to mame. So for example, the tool that you use, the scythe that you use to scrape along the side of the container to loosen the roots is just way too big for doing mame. And that means that you kind of have to improvise. I don't think it's going to be too hard to get this out of here, but basically I'm using just one side of my bent nose tweezers here to cut along the edge, and that wasn't too difficult. So with this particular one of the things I think I want to do for this repotting, and this doesn't actually look like it needed to be repotted, which is fantastic, but now I know. And I'm going to just do a quick trim on the bottom here. Looks like I've got my perlite and cocoa coir mix on the bottom. That's probably because this came out of a 2-inch container when I put it into here, and I didn't want to remove all of the soil all at once. All right, let's see here. So because this is a teeny tiny cascade, I've pulled out these other options. I really like this pot, but I think it's a little bit too big for this guy. It still works, but now I think that's going to be too small. These are about the same size as that. They're just skinnier from side to side. Okay, so I just dropped a piece of screen in there, and this is an old Jim Barrett pot. So now I need a tie wire, and because I like to minimize the number of wires that are going through teeny tiny drainage holes like that, I'm going to make the tie, I'm not going to actually tie the screen down, and I'm going to make the tie wire in a particular way. So this is 1 millimeter anodized aluminum, and what I'm going to do is kind of the same operation that I do to hold screen in. So essentially I make an S, but I've left the two tails really long. And then I'm going to make my staple. So now I have a staple just like I would normally use to hold down the screen, but instead I'm going to stick it from the bottom through here, and that will give me a pull point for holding the tree in. And I'm just going to leave the screen to gravity and the pressure from the soil. So I'm going to put this a little bit higher in the pot than it was in the last pot, so you can really appreciate this section of the trunk. And let's see, I need to get the angle right here, but I'm paying attention to the positioning side to side, as well as making sure that I have enough space to get at least a little bit of soil between the root ball and the side of the pot. Rather than a chopstick, if the point of your chopstick is too big to get between the wall, you can use the same thing that I used to get it out, which is the tip of a bent nose tweezer. This one I actually have three different. This one, the tips are a little bit too big, but in any case. I feel like I need like a little Zen rake or something to put in here, but anyway. I've gone ahead and repotted a number of these. This one needed a trim as well, but you can see that it's back in shape after getting quite overgrown, but I think that all that overgrowing actually made the trunk get bigger, which is kind of cool. So to encourage the moss to come back, what I've done is I've taken some sphagnum moss and I've shredded it using one of the larger soil sifting sizes, and then I've also shredded a medallion, like something like this, of live moss mixed in with it, and I'm going to lay this just in a light layer over the surface of the fine lava mix. That's it for this time. I am going to set this back outside. I don't even need to water it because it is currently pouring down rain, and that's going to keep this moist and get the moss going again on these plants. And I will maybe do a little bit of a follow-up to see if there's any difference in the growth of my Mame using this soil mix or layered mix of different soils rather than just the fine lava by itself. If you want to share tips and tricks with everyone else in terms of growing Mame bonsai, put it in the comments below. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time.